market economics. Today you have a remarkable situation, by the way. It's an example of how things are changing. Where in the past, I remember in the 1970s, 1980s, attending UN meetings, G77 meetings, when the West would be preaching, you must open up your economies and you must liberalize. And the third world countries would say, hey, if we open up our economies, we'll be raped by the West. It's bad for us. Today you have this remarkable situation where the greatest believers in free market economics today are China, India, and the other Asian countries. And then you have the populations in America and Europe saying, hey, if we open up our economies, we're going to lose out to China and India. And that's why Lou Dobbs is now got such a big resonance in America. And that's a huge shift, in barely 10 to 15 years, So I think what the Asians will do is, in the first phase, demonstrate how they can implement many of these practices better than others can.
Great. So there are way more of you than I have time for, and I'm going to apologize in advance. I want you to spend time with him afterwards, so we'll have time. Of course, we have another event at 5:30, so we're not going to be able to handle it. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Damir Marusik. I'm from the American Interest magazine. You wrote an article for us 2 issues ago about the rise of Chinese smart power, and you contrasted that with Western strategy. One thing that's jumped out at me in the Foreign Affairs article was this notion of Western democracies, their strategy being hijacked by competitive populism. So I'm wondering if you can talk about why you're so optimistic that we can come to terms when it seems like strategy is being set, especially you see the elections today in the United States, that there's all this talk about very easy solutions, appeals to populism. Where will Western wise men come to cede power to a rising East, I guess?
I guess the correct answer is that the wise men will come from the New America Foundation, right?
Exactly. It's never about peace, always about equilibrium.
Let me emphasize one point. I don't underestimate what America and other Western countries can do. I think it is still amazing that the world's best universities are still very much in the West, and the world's most highly educated populations are still in the West, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot that can be done. But the problem that the West has had is that the West has grown insular and arrogant. It's begun to be, the West has reached a position where it cannot conceive of the possibility that it is part of the problem, cannot conceive part of the possibility that it may be failing in some critical areas. So first you need to go through a very painful process of mindset change. And essentially, if you want to know why Asians have turned around, is that the Asians have asked fundamental questions like, how did we lose 200 years? What did we do wrong? Right? So you get a much more fundamental kind of thinking taking place in Asia than you do in the West. In the West, there's an assumption that no matter what happens, the Western states will do well. That's no longer the case. You have to adapt. You have to change. You have to compete. And you've got to get rid of the common agricultural policy. You've got to get rid of your subsidies and so on and so forth. But these are painful adjustments which, in a sense, many of the Asian states have made themselves and decided to make. And what most people have not noticed is the unilateral trade liberalization of many Asian countries. Many Asian countries have reduced their tariffs way ahead of the WTO commitments. Why? Because they believe they're going to succeed. So this is what the West needs to do also.
You're going to go fast.
One of the changes that may result from climate change is an increased accessibility of the Russian heartland. You've talked about Asia, but Eastern Russia is the one Asian country that you've left out of your discussion. What do you think might Russia's role be?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I have not discussed Russia at all in my book. And it was a very deliberate decision on my part, because I cannot figure out what is happening in Russia. See, logically, if you go on pure geopolitical analysis, the rise of China, and it's real, okay, Reuther of China, rise of China, is going to create the main country that should be worried about it initially is Russia. I I mean, Russia has got the world's largest uninhabited territory next to the fastest growing, most populous nation. So logically, I should be in Russia, Moscow today worrying about China. But guess what? Putin spends most of his time attacking the United States, attacking Western Europe, and obviously, and I can understand some of that anger, because in the 1990s, essentially the Russians feel they were sold a bill of goods by the United States when they were asked to become democratic overnight. What happened? The economy imploded. They had a GNP smaller than Belgium's. The infant mortality rates went up. Life expectancy went down. And the West said, hey, well done, Russia, you're democratic. Wonderful, wonderful. And I've never seen people as bitter. When you talk to the Russians in private, they are so